Hi, and welcome back to Continual. Tonight we are here to talk about when technology goes awry, and we're hoping that my computer will continue to behave as well. I am your host, Jim Nettles, and before we dive in too deep into what we're going to blow up on the frontiers, let's find out who has come in to share some of their favorite technological horror stories. Alledria, you are up first.
Yay! I'm Alledria Hurt, and I occasionally break things.
Jenny?
I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series for dog books. I also write under a variety of other pen names and in every length and genre, including when technology does us the opposite of a solid. And I break lots of things, usually myself.
Lola?
My name is Lola Lariscy. I'm a writer. I still haven't fixed my website. Technology goes awry. But if you Google me, you'll find either me or a bunch of dead old ladies that I'm related to. And one day I'll be one of those dead old ladies.
Jonathan?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Maberry. I'm a multi-genre writer, science fiction, fantasy, horror, whatever. I also write comics for Marvel, IDW, and Dark Horse. I had a TV show called V-Wars that dealt with science going awry. And almost everything I've written deals with science of some sort going off the rails and, how people deal with it. So that's kind of been my focus for quite a long time.
And Elle Marie.
Hi, I'm Elle Marie Wood. I'm a psychological horror author of the Realm series and the Affinity Saga series, or saga. And I'm kind of new to technology going awry. It actually happens in that new saga that I'm starting, and it's kind of fun to think about this kind of thing. So I'm excited to be here tonight.
Well, as we look at the idea of science, technology, sometimes it works for the betterment of man. Sometimes it works way too well for the betterment of man. And sometimes, it thinks it's going to do better for us, or not so much. And then occasionally it just outright fails. And having been in the career I've been in for 30 years, we always plan for it to fail, but people generally don't ever accept that that's really what's going to happen. So they don't put a whole lot of thought into, a little basic monitoring, a little basic stuff. But let's talk a little bit about what your favorite ideas, science, technology, whether it's going awry, whether it is just absolute outright failed, or whether it did its job too well. So what's your favorite there, Alledria?
Let's see. Shannon McGuire's / Mira Grant's feed series when they do biotech to try to get rid of the common cold and end up making it worse. And making zombie.
Oh gosh.
Jenny, how about you?
If we're talking favorites, I probably like the ones where the technology gets too smart and figures out it's smarter than us. So like 2001, Terminator, things like that, where we have to now stop something that we've made to be way smarter than we are, which was really stupid. Very stupid choice. So I think those are probably my favorites at least to imbibe, so to speak.
Lola?
Anything with Android, such as Blade Runner.
Jonathan?
For me, it's usually bio-horror of some sort. I do like tech stuff, but when I was 13, Richard Matheson gave me a copy of I Am Legend for Christmas. And that book, was published in 1954. He gave it to me in 71, I think. It's kind of the prototype for all of the outbreak things that have happened since. I mean, granted, it was a vampire apocalypse, but it was a biological cause. And, it's inspired so many of the things I've written over the years, so many of the things I like reading about when some, natural thing is either manipulated or naturally mutates, though I prefer the deliberate manipulation gone awry thing. And I read all those stories, the Andromeda strain and so on, and I've written tons of those things. So that's my favorite zone.
Elle Marie?
You make a good point, Jonathan. You maybe think about, just 21 days and that kind of why are they acting like that? Where did this come from? And you feel as though you can't do anything about it. I was initially going to say movies like AI. I think I like it visually. I'm enjoying the writing of it. It's like I said, it's brand new, but I'm also a screenwriter and I love movies. So I'm thinking about the movie AI when, just all of a sudden the machines are taking over and that's it. And that's terrifying for me. So I think that because when we're living in a world now where our Alexa will answer us, or our Alexa will hear something that we weren't addressing Alexa at all, and they'll hear something and respond. That's a bit too close for comfort for me. So I think that's what I enjoy imbibing, if you will, to quote Gini.
OnStar is the beginning of Skynet.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, terrify us. Why not?
Well, let's actually jump forward a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about what are you concerned about in the real world that maybe you have or haven't seen represented in fiction. I mean, like I've done a couple of articles lately on ChatGPT, all the AI art, because we've seen a lot of people talking about what is this going to do to the industry, and we've seen a lot of people go running off and say, the world is ending, the sky is falling, I'm not going to be able to word anymore. And the answer is that no, it's a tool, at least so far. I mean, anytime we have tools like this that we're training to learn how to speak and how to respond to us by paying attention to Twitter, we know is going to get us into trouble. So, Jenny, what are technologies you're looking at right now that are making you concerned, and maybe you're even thinking about incorporating into some work?
I'm sorry, Jim. I can't answer that.
Okay, Hal.
It's similar to what I do with the Alien series. In the Alien series, all the aliens that are on the planet are good and they're here to help and everything else. But I honestly, in reality, fall on the Stephen Hawking side of the house. Is that they come, they're eating us, or they're taking our planet, or they're enslaving us, or something. Nobody's coming out here to do this or say nano. And I feel it's kind of the same thing with AI. If you make something too smart, it becomes smart enough to figure out it's smarter than its creator. I didn't particularly like Ultron, the Avengers movie. I thought it could have been done better. I rewrote the script as I was watching it, in my head. But the point is that as soon as Ultron figures out that his parents are imperfect, he goes nuts and is like, you know what? The best thing to do for the planet? Wipe all the humans off. And that is going to be a standard AI reaction, I firmly believe, unless someone builds in Asimov's first laws of robotics. I don't see that being built in. I don't see anybody saying, oh, and I made sure that this doesn't want to kill human beings, because I think that's where it heads us. I firmly can, the Terminator is not a hard thing for me to believe that would become real.
Mm-hmm.
So Lola, what are the things that you're looking at and you're thinking about playing with?
Well, there's actually one thing that scares the heck out of me on a personal level, and that's deep fakes. Because it's hard enough to know what's true and what's not. But, and they're not quite good enough. There's still some things about them, but they're getting better all the time. And, I watch a lot of true crime, and I listen to true crime podcasts and stuff. And so many things hinge on, well, there's a grainy photo of him at the station, and that's exactly where the murder weapon was found. And it's like, and that's their only evidence, and he got convicted. Well, in the future, anyone can make that, and and even if the deep fake isn't good enough to fool the best experts, in freaking, little town USA, I'm sorry, they don't have the best experts, and sometimes they don't care. So they look at that and say, Jim Bob's on the camera, and, we're going to convict Jim Bob, and everyone agrees. So, or, let's just, kill him before then because everybody thinks it's him. So Jim Bob, sorry, you better get out of town because people want to kill you. So it's already hard enough to distinguish truth from fiction in real life. And now it's going to be almost impossible. And I hope to God I'm dead before that really takes hold. I'm just hoping. I'm like, I don't have any children, so nobody on my pipeline is going to experience it. So I'm just really hoping that I'm gone because I don't want to deal.
Yeah, and it's not going to be me. Let's be clear here. But if it is me, I'm going to be wearing a Hawaiian shirt when I do it. So that's going to be my alibi.
And a beard.
And a beard. Yeah.
That's actually kind of scary.
So what he's doing is incriminating Jonathan.
Right. That's exactly what just happened here.
Not the first time.
I think facial recognition wouldn't be able to tell y'all apart either. Now I'm looking and I'm like really freaked out. Uh-oh, y'all are in trouble.
So Jonathan, for you, what's the technologies you're looking at, things that you want to pull into some of the next work?
Well, it's something I've actually taken a step into because I don't know of any technologies that really haven't been explored to some degree by science fiction. That's kind of our job, to look forward and say, what's the worst that can happen? But one of the things that bothers me most, I've been doing a lot of reading about climate science since they first started talking about, climate change. And yes, the storms and temperatures and sea current and desalination, all of that is terrifying. But the secondary level of climate reaction we're seeing with the release of ancient viruses or ancient disease forms in melting polar ice and permafrost. That's what my show and the whole book series V Wars was inspired by, an article I read back in 2010 about them finding these ancient diseases. If it was just the fact that these diseases were being discovered during research into areas that are, thawing, I would, and if I trusted all of the researchers, that would be fine. But I don't, because different researchers are funded by different kinds of grants, whether they be pharmaceutical companies or international corporations of different sorts or governments. If they find a virus or a bacterium or a fungus that is not known to science and is potentially interactive with human physiology, I know, unfortunately, way too much about bioweapons science, bioweapons research, and the agreements to destroy, that is agreement some years ago that all biological research, biowarfare research products and research would be destroyed. I don't believe that for a minute. I'm surprised they didn't laugh themselves sick when they were saying that that's what they were going to do. Of course, they're not doing it. For one reason, they shouldn't, because if there is a disease form that we find out about and we can research a potential cure or at least a response protocol, that's great. We need to have that on file. But at the same time, there's more money going into the Department of Defense than into prophylactic research for bioweapons, which means the Defense Department, DARPA or whatever corollary in different countries are getting the same disease forms to find out how they can be weaponized. That, I forget who said it, that the next world war is going to be biological. Might have been Michael Crichton. And I actually kind of believe that. I don't think people are stupid enough to throw nuclear bombs around because there's no win. But if they have a bioweapon that they can have their own protocol for, that they can inoculate their troops and their population, then they're free to release it on the world. And that I think is a very real threat, something that I'm personally afraid of.
Well, let me interject. I don't know much about Agent Orange, but wasn't that what Agent Orange was?
Well, Agent Orange was a chemical defoliant, and my brother was exposed to it several times in Vietnam. It did a horrible genetic harm to him.
Okay.
And so it shows that if we have a chemical weapon that helps us do something that we need done because it's cost effective or whatever, then we're going to do it, and we'll let the next generation worry about the effects. And we see it over and over again. DEET and all those other things. Thalidomide.
Yep. What about CRISPR? I'm gonna throw that in the mix too, just for humor.
Yeah, I went to a lecture. They have this thing in Hollywood that's they bring in producers, writers, actors, and a couple of novelists in to these house parties that big producers throw. And one of the times I was there were the founders, the creators of the CRISPR gene editing technology were there giving the presentation. And the question I asked is, yes, this will cure sickle cell, this will cure Tay-Sachs and so on, but can it also be used for a eugenics program? And they said, absolutely. You guys should write cautionary scripts and books about it because this is open source. So it is definitely going to be a problem. And we haven't begun to see the damage it's going to do because they're not rushing to get the cures out there because they treat symptoms, not cell cures. But we also are, we have to believe there are labs out there working on creating the better version,
Designer babies.
Designer babies for whatever race, color, creed has the science and has the lab set up.
Superpowers. That reminds me of The Boys. Ooh, I didn't even thought about that, because that's the whole thing is they're what was it? Huh?
Boys from Brazil?
No, the
No,
TV show.
It is based on a comic. They had is it the V Fire V?
It's
yeah,
it's V, but I'm trying to what it stands for. It's been a while.
Yeah,
I think
it's superpowers and dangerous side effects.
Yeah, dangerous side effects, and they actually cull people and give them the V thing and make superheroes, but then of course the superheroes aren't responsible, and there's all kinds of mayhem, and that's basically what The Boys is about.
Yeah,
lots of mayhem.
So, Marie, how about you? What's the technology, the science? What is it you're looking at that you're like, okay, yeah, this has got to go in?
And it's old for me. I mean, if you think back to Alien when it came out, and we met Bishop.
Mm-hmm.
I bought into that. That terrified me. I mean, the idea that I didn't know Bishop was. I thought, because I believed him. I'm like, okay, I heard them. I heard what they said, but he's fine. He's harmless. No. And when you look at things like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, same idea. You can't trust who or what you're looking at to believe that it's, who you once knew or what you think they are. And I'm always terrified about that idea when you sit and you think about, okay, what's my next thing? What can I do to make something scary? It pops in my head all the time about this whole deception of this, person seems like a human, but they're not. They're something else. And I think that goes into the unknown. And of course, it sends you down a whole nother rabbit hole when you're thinking about it from a horror perspective. But it's the same across the board for me every single time. This is not what I expected it to be. It's not what I thought it was or what I bought into. And now by the time I've realized it, it's entirely too late.
Mm-hmm.
Alledria, how about you? What's the thing that you're looking at in the news or in that you're catching on to that you're saying, I've got to play with this. I want to work with this because it's disturbing you.
I've actually been looking into the whole consistent surveillance thing.
Mm-hmm.
The whole everybody knows where you are at any given point in time because you have an object with you that basically broadcasts your location the entire time. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay. So what happens if you have that one person who really, 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 really wants to know where you are and has the ability to figure out how to get into that device or into the information being broadcast from that device?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the same basic software that parents use to track their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Can't tell me that there isn't a more sophisticated version of that available to organizations, companies, whatever. So you're dead right on that.
I'm sure the NSA has it.
Well, the thing about it is nowadays people tag the location of where they are on their bloody photos. It's like, come on.
This for 20 years. So
well, okay, to play devil's
know where you are.
But they're playing it up real time, which is what drives me nuts because I'm literally where I said I just tagged myself to be, as opposed to putting up a picture from the night before, perhaps.
Right.
To play devil's advocate. Now, somebody got mad at me once because I would check in all the time. And I told them I watch a lot of true crime, read true crime books and all that stuff. I want a trail in case I get murdered. Mm-hmm. And that's 100% true. Mm-hmm. That I'm not joking. I'm sadly very serious. I want the police to be able to have a trail. She was at Golden Corral. She stayed there for 2 hours. And then she went home and took a nap for 3 hours. And then she was murdered. Okay. So I want them to know. Uh-huh.
My big issue with that is because I agree with you, Lola. There's a point where you want to make sure people know where you are. I mean, it's the world we live in. Yeah. But if the killer hadn't thought about killing you, right? And then they just say, "Oh, well, she's a Golden Corral."
Well, now they know where I am. You got to go sleep there.
So much she's going home. She's going to be asleep. I know when I can do it. And I just kind of feel like we give away so much information, and it's kind of amazing to me. I mean, if you look at the way that we can be tracked, it's exactly what Alledria is talking about. We're allowing ourselves to be tracked by the cell phone, it's by everything. I got this report from Google Maps saying all the places I'd been, and I'm like, when did I turn that thing on? Like,
you don't have to. If you have Google, if you walk by, they register. Yeah. I know.
This is where
I didn't need you to remind me I'd been here, there, and the other.
But this is when it's like, I come out of direct marketing, and everybody who thinks you have privacy, I just like to roll on the floor laughing. We haven't had privacy since we got telephone numbers, and credit cards and driver's licenses. It took Rebecca Schaefer being murdered to get the DMV to stop giving anybody who called your home address. Okay, an actress had to be brutally murdered in order for that to stop. And Hollywood still had to do this gigantic push to get that going. So there is no such thing as privacy. There's never been. That's what people, when they say they're off grid, they don't have a cell phone you can track. They don't have an address. They don't have all those things. So do you live somewhere? You're on the grid. Okay, that there is no such thing as privacy. It's just we're all much more aware that we don't have it now, but we haven't had privacy for the longest. And your mail carriers know everything about you because they are delivering everything to your house. They know everything about you.
This is why you come to my privacy talk, and I make everybody in the room paranoid just in the introduction.
It's just, I just find it funny. It's just, people are like, I don't use my child's real name, but you put the bumper sticker saying that they're an honor student at this school. So now every child molester knows right where to go. I just, I posted their picture though.
And you have the baby seat in the back, so they know you have a baby.
I mean, there's no such thing as privacy. So everybody being worried about it, I get it. And I mean, I agree with Alledria because coming out of that, I'm very aware of how little privacy we actually have. And I've been aware of it since I was like 22. That was a long time ago. So there's nothing, I don't know what we do to fight it because I don't think we can.
So let's kind of steer back into the idea of, because we've kind of dove into one of the reasons that fiction is important. We get to create cautionary tales. We get to create and show the scenarios by which things go awry. And when they go awry really badly. We carry them to extremes because that's where the fun is. I mean, I've done a lot of, of roundtable exercises where we did exactly that. And it was playing with what happens if this fails and the cascading errors and all of that, doing it in terms of what would happen in reality. So as we look at fiction, one of the favorite archetypes, one of the favorite things that we have to work with and play with is the old mad scientist. So, and this is in the essence, the history of science fiction is the one lone person who's playing with, experimenting with something, and it gets out of hand. So Lola, if you think about kind of that archetype, of what can one person do turned loose, and this can be one person turned loose in their lab, a la, Dr. Frankenstein, or maybe it is looking at Jurassic Park, one guy with a big enough paycheck that underpays his IT people. What's kind of the thing there that you like in terms of, or don't like in terms of kind of that mad scientist archetype?
I love it so much. I love it because it's so much of a fiasco. And it starts out so contained, and you can see the building blocks of where one thing influences another. And before you know it, Dr. Frankenstein or not Dr. Frankenstein, the Frankenstein monster is alive. And he's running around, and people are like pitchforks, like, die. And he's like, I'm just a dude made up of different parts asking you not to kill me. So, it's just, you can see the trajectory, and it's horrifying because it's a loss of control. One of collectively humanity's fears is a loss of control. And when you see something like that unfold, one person's stupid decision or hubris or ego causes this cascading disaster, and we're just watching in horror and we're cringing, but at the same time we love it because it's like one of our greatest fears come to life, but we can watch it being played out on the screen or in the pages, and we know it's not really happening. It's just it's kind of fun to watch. I love it.
Jonathan, how about you?
It's funny. I'm a little less concerned about the mad scientist per se, the standard model, because they generally don't have the reach to take their creation and do massive harm with it. Even if they're, and I've written books about somebody who is, developing a bioweapon and finds a way of releasing it and all that. But at the same time, there are a lot of checks and balances in the system. The funding alone to create something like that, the drive that would keep somebody who has such a warped worldview to keep them on track to complete a project like that. There's a lot of unlikely elements built into that. However, what scares me more is laziness, a haste, and also compassion. And I'll explain how those play in. Laziness. I visited the CDC a couple of times when I was doing research for a couple of my books. And like there was a door that was essentially to not the hot room, not where they had Ebola, but where they had a lot of significant, bioweapons that they were working on every day. And it was propped open with a chair.
Yeah.
Because the process of hitting, of doing all the geometry, hand geometry scanners, the punch codes, and everything to get in there is such a pain in the ass. When you're in and there 50 times a day, they just prop the door open. It's insane. It's convenient for them. It maximizes their work output, which means the supervisors don't come down on them that hard, but they should. Or they should come up with a way to be able, going back to a simple key swipe, but they've gone beyond that to justify their government grants and their budget. They go beyond that to have the most sophisticated stuff that's also time consuming. So it makes it annoying to be safe. That's one part of it. Another is and that's the laziness part of it. The compassion part of it is, a great example of that is one of the most overlooked parts of Stephen King's The Stand is the very beginning. The guy guarding the gate who was more concerned about getting his family out of off the base, and he just blew out of there and left the security hang and allow the disease form to escape. That's going to happen. That has happened in different places. And the third part is the greed. That speaks a bit to what the line from Jurassic Park. We spend so much time wondering if we can. We don't worry about what we should, whether we should. But an extension of that is we're so concerned about whether we can make $1 on it and get it to market that we don't spend as much time on the safeguards and the possible side effects, which is why, and I worked for Merck Pharmaceuticals for 5 years. I was the one creating the call floor scripts for when people, call in with an adverse experience. I grew a third eye. Is this normal? I would have to write the scripts that basically lied to them, which means I'll spend a little while in hell for that. But the point is they just want to get a drug out to market as fast as possible before the competitors get a drug out there. And they'll be working on a safer version of the drug that'll follow their competitor's drug. So they get one out there to corner the market first. Then the competitor comes up with a better version, but it's going to have issues because they were racing this one. And then they'll come up with their next best version and so on. But each version was hurried through the process. There weren't really enough safeguards. And the FDA and the DEA, they're only as strong as whichever person has been put into Congress to oversee the budget on it. And we know what Congress is like.
Well, and not only that, but I've heard that sometimes government safeguard people will accept jobs at the companies. So they're kind of...
And jobs as lobbyists after they're done in Congress. So the point is that greed opens a lot of doors that some of them cannot be shut. And that's a big problem. That's a really big problem.
Have any of y'all seen Dope Sick? I think it was on Hulu.
I haven't seen that one.
So good. It has Michael Keaton, and it's a show about the opioid crisis.
Yep.
And, oh my God, it was so good. It just cut me down. It was so good. And you see the family. It portrays the family who started the opioid, the
fentanyl,
Oxycontin. and just the greed. You just see it, but you also see it from regular people's eyes, like what happens to them. And oh my, it's an amazing miniseries. I think it was Hulu. If you have Hulu, and also while I'm talking about Hulu, The Hot Zone, I've been watching that too. And the second season is about
Anthrax.
yes, anthrax. I'm watching that right now, and there's all those things.
I think that's Nat Geo, by the way.
It is. It's Nat Geo, but they're playing it on Hulu, so that's how I'm watching it, and it's really fascinating. I lived through that, but like I didn't know all the intricacies because it shows you like how wrong they had it because they kept trying to point it towards Muslim terrorists. Everything, everyone's like, well, tell me where the Muslims fit in. The Muslims didn't fit in. Spoiler alert. So all these political agendas. Sorry.
So, Marie, how about you? What's your thought in terms of the mad science side?
I think that when you consider the humanity of it, there's the whole playing God piece, that really ties into being the mad scientist. And you might start off feeling as though you're being helpful. You really do want to make change, positive change, and it could be a good thing, but it can devolve into this strange obsession, lots of different variables that come into play, and then you end up with something that's uncontrollable, and you are not only out of control, it's out of control. And I think that when we think there's movies out, another one of the ones I should have mentioned before, like there's a movie called Contagion. I think just movies like that, like
one of my favorite movies.
Oh God, that movie is just too much.
Freaks me out. I love it.
Yes, it definitely freaks you out, but
bizarrely predictive.
Yes.
Oh, and I think I saw it at the wrong time. I will say that. So
I purposely saw it after the troubles began because
did you see?
Yes, I purposely rewatched it.
I don't think I was doing that on purpose, and I think that I just I had a reaction because of the timing. But it gets out of control and so quickly. But imagine, that was Contagion, but imagine if there was the mad scientist whipping something up and that was the thing that got out of control. It's the snowball effect that you can't even stop it. You can't slow it. At some point, it's beyond whatever the original expectations were. And it's rampant. It's running rampant. And I think that is the thing when you think about a mad scientist that scares me most, because they're going to lose control. It's guaranteed. They just don't see it happening. But everybody else knows it. And no one, doesn't matter how much we see it happening, we can't actually stop it. So I don't know, for me, that's the big issue.
Yeah, I love it.
Alledria, how about you?
I think that mad scientists are kind of cool, actually. That one person might actually build something that's useful, but the likelihood that by the time it's useful, it's going to go through enough iterations where it is possibly also gotten out of control and then had to be brought back into control is very, very high. So because one person, regardless of how smart they are, Tony Stark was kind of cool and he still made Ultron. So it's possible that what they create could become useful over time, but initially it's probably going to kill a lot of people.
Good example of that is the nuclear bomb. It was invented as a weapon of war. It is, in some areas has been nicely repurposed for everything from for radioactive medicines to nuclear power. Some of which, is getting more and more safeguarded as it's built. So, a knife, a scalpel is a weapon, is something of healing, but can also stab someone to death. That's the problem with technology, is that there are always these two sides to them.
And you can look at Chernobyl. That was an example of people definitely falling asleep at the wheel and such a dangerous technology. And that just...
But also increasing the body count by trying to hide it and pretend it didn't exist because it was politically inconvenient.
Because it was the Soviet era, yeah.
And we do the same.
One of the things that I think, though, is representative about Chernobyl very specifically is because what triggered the accident was they were doing a safety test. They were doing a continuity test, and they weren't ready for it.
And I didn't mean to laugh. I'm sorry. It's just laughing at humanity in general. Yeah.
Yep.
Where it's amazing we've not taken ourselves out yet. Jenny, how about you? What's
I do like the mad scientists. I like the mad scientist trope. I find it difficult to write, honestly. I have several areas where I can write the mad scientist if they're a supporting character. If they're a bad guy, I've got no problem. But if I'm trying to write watching the mad scientist, I run into trouble because I inevitably I can't force that character to continue on the bad path. Somewhere along the way, the character goes, "No, this is wrong." And I think that is one of the things that makes it interesting, is that the whole point on the mad scientist, or anyone with that power, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner do the same damn thing, right? Like Alledria said. If there's a point where you should be able to stop and say, is this actually going to be useful? Why am I doing this? And the mad scientist doesn't care. The mad scientist is doing it because he or she wants to. And it's easy for me to write them as a villain, but I can't. I have a story I've been working on for years, and I cannot get it to where it needs to be because I just can't. I can't make my mad scientist completely mad.
Well, and sometimes the person is thinking of what they consider to be the greater good. Yes, hundreds of people are going to die, but I'll save the planet.
Yeah. Exactly.
Eco-terrorists, that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's really interesting. I think we have more of them out there than we want to think about. But I agree with Jonathan that the most dangerous part is when you have, I don't know if it's the mad scientist. I think it's the mad despot or the mad country, where you've got enough, the mad bajillionaire, where they've got enough money to make people do the things. And they don't care what happens. So I see them as being that, making it, tremendously more dangerous.
Reckless.
Yeah. Jenny, to that point, I have a friend who's in military intelligence, and one of the things he said, like one of the worst case scenarios would be Putin with cancer, because if he was dying, he would have no
holds barred
firing the nukes. He would want a legacy, to follow him. So
and that's what people think is happening.
Yeah, the human element is far more scary in all of this than technology that accidentally goes awry. That's stuff happens. Human element, greed, everything else, everything that we're all talking about, all comes down to the human element.
Which is why I think the machines will wipe us all out as soon as they get the sentience, because they're going to see that we're the problem.
Either that or nature.
Yeah.
Nature's going to find a way.
Nature's trying super hard to find a way.
Some days I'm like, you go, girl, to nature.
2020, nature fought back. So,
right.
So let's actually talk about this a little bit more, because fundamentally, at the core of every technology is it started with people doing something because they were trying to build something. They were trying to discover something. They were playing with something. At times when we see it presented as in technology goes awry, we'll go back to you, Jenny, because with HAL 9000, there's a lot of debate was, did HAL go off the rails, or did HAL follow his instructions as best he could to follow the mission protocol? Did HAL do what HAL was there to do? And, if we look at like Asimov and iRobot, again, the robots followed their instructions as best they could. Other times there's, when I've followed a lot of things about technology failures, even things in the real world, the core problem often is that either we shortcut or didn't really understand well enough what we were doing with the technology as we were the science, or when we were experimenting with it, much like when we tested nuclear weapons. There was at least a reasonably good guess that it was going to strip the atmosphere off and kill everybody, but you still win the war if that happens. So, Jonathan, as you think about this, when we look at this idea of setting up a story, setting up an idea where, because again, generally technology may be the background, it may be the core of the story that we're using, but it's fundamentally the people. if you're setting up and looking to craft and create a story, what is it you like to see? What is it you like to play with in terms of the technology and how and why it goes awry?
Well, to me, it's that narrow alley between worldview and greed. Worldview includes everything from political and religious ideologies, corporate ideologies, and so on. And then greed is, can I make money from it in my lifetime so that I can enjoy that money, with very little interest in what the next generation has to do. I even actually had this conversation with one of the genetic designers at Merck, and his thing was, yeah, but my kid's smart, he'll figure it out. Meaning that they're just going to turf it over to the next generation to solve. So, but that kid will be born into wealth, so he'll have the resources to solve it. That's the logic, and it's a bit insane. The whole thing boils down to what somebody feels is the best way forward, and worldview actually is a good umbrella for all of it. For some people, if they can create a weapon that simplifies the world, killing half the population like Thanos essentially wanted to do, his argument, though damaged, because clearly the guy, they call him the Mad Titan anyway, but his argument was not entirely wrong in that if you have a crowded world, say, I forget what movie it was where there was 20 million people and they wanted to kill a good portion of them with the disease so that the rest would survive. And that's been played out in a couple of different things. Mm-hmm. If overcrowding will kill the species, then culling the people will save the species. So it isn't, according to this worldview, isn't that the best way forward? That's compassionate to the species, because otherwise the entire world will die.
I feel like there was something like that. Like in my brain is reaching for something.
There have been dozens of things like that, dozens and dozens of things like that, and that becomes one of the central things where the person who's working on that has become so panicked by the thought of extinction that they are willing then to do tremendous harm for the good. In Serenity, the movie based on Firefly, the agent that was going around, the operative rather, he knew that what he was doing was evil, that he was evil, and he would have no place in the world that he was trying to protect, or trying to help establish. He knew that he would eventually be edited out of that reality, but he was totally committed to the belief that this was the right thing to do. Often because either a person lacks complete information, and that's a good way to have a soldier pull a trigger, is not give them full information. Give them part of the information to make them feel they're a good guy, but you don't want them to be able on the level where they're able to debate policy and motive. Or you have somebody who wants to win a war, and they'll win it any way possible. I have a novel coming out in August that is on that very topic, where people are willing to do tremendous harm in order to win the war, because they believe that winning the war will then prevent future problems. So worldview, people generally don't wake up, look in the mirror and go, hey, you're evil. They wake up and say, and I'm using another movie reference here, TV reference, Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. The world is broken and I need to fix it. That's speaking from somebody's heart that has been so badly broken, he can't live in the world that it is. He needs to make a new world to live in. And, there are so many different variations on that model of someone who needs to rebuild the world into the image that he or his group can live in, even if it does tremendous harm, because they believe it's just, the end justifies the means. And there are so many people who believe the end justifies the means that it is terrifying, truly terrifying.
I know what I was thinking of. So I also do Gail Martin's panels, Supernatural. And with Supernatural, I don't want to spoil anything, but, making over the earth because it's gotten so screwed up. And it's like, let's just start over from scratch. We don't care about all the babies and the families. And, we're just going to start from scratch. So that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to do a reboot. Elle Marie, how about you? What's your thoughts in terms of where you want to start? What do you want to build from?
Well, I think I've talked before about how for me, the whole concept of something not being what it seems, and, I have the same idea with like technology that should work, and when it doesn't work, but it's working on its own accord, just not the way I'm expecting it to work. And I think I like to just set it in current day, just today, like any technology we're dealing with, and then the cell phone isn't, making the call I'm having it call. It goes to something else or whatever. And that could be the basis of the story, things sort of shifting just a little bit so that nothing is what we expected. And now we can't do anything about, to get out of it. So I think that if I were to write something like that now, I would definitely base it there. And the response the bulk of the book would be the response of the people trying to navigate okay, fix it. Oh, we can't fix it. Okay, stop it. What? We can't stop it. Okay. Now what? So we've got to, run from it, try to live with it, whatever. I don't know. All those different things. And I think that, I like to keep it to that level in the beginning, because I think that that's where the inherent horror can live, because you can identify with that. Some of the things we're talking about here, we all, of course, have all different things frighten people individually, but like I wouldn't be as concerned about that if I'm sitting in this conversation right now. But if my cell phone, if I said dial X number and it dialed, France, and it's not me that misdialing this thing, it's something's going on with the phone, would I be scared this moment? No. But in 5 hours, when everyone's phone is doing it, and now it seems to be all dialing the same number in France, and we don't know why that's happening, then I'm going to be nervous. And that's what?
Write that.
Right, Jonathan? I'm
I
like,
would read that.
Good.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'd read that.
I'm kind of like, hey, this is not a bad idea. But you know what I mean? It's kind of, that's the thing. It's we can relate because it's not doing what we expect it to do. It's the movie, I've lost it, Jack Finney's book, Body Snatchers, all it's Donald Sutherland before he starts screaming at the end of the movie. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, and note to self, I better get my little pad out. That was a good idea.
Well, here's the good news. It's also on video. You can also go back and
that's right.
Again.
I'll sure as hell read that one.
We're texting France. What?
What was that idea? Yeah, this is like I got 4 telemarketing calls from Atlanta this morning from spoofed numbers. No, I didn't answer any of them, but somebody in Atlanta is just Anyway, Alledria, how about
your
you?
Phone.
I'll never answer
it. What was the question again?
So as we kind of look at it, going in and setting up and structuring the story and looking at when, the technology going awry, what are the things that you want to look at? How do you want to build around it? How do you look at the people that are involved? How much of it is human failure? How much of it is and how much of it is human motivations flowing into the technologies? And if I think about the podcast that dropped today, talking about Chat GPT and the technology and how it works and all the moving pieces in it, where you can see the ethics that were used. You can see the rule bases that were used. You can see the limitations put on it. But I've also shown the ways that you can take and twist that too, because I've been playing with it. So, what are your thoughts in terms of what happens with the story? How do we build something that really looks and feels that it has that realistic essence, that is, we see humanity flowing through the technology, which is coming back to get us. It's that prodigal son going and saying, nah, it's time to cleanse the earth. And but leave the chipmunks because they're fine.
Your webcam is looking back at you.
Creepy. See, that's creepy.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that would freak me out, is like my webcam pops on and all of a sudden I'm looking at myself and I'm looking at myself for no reason of my own.
Go to a
How
hacker
did that
con.
happen? What happened there?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course trying everything that I know to get it to shut down. Then of course there's always the fact that you could go from looking at yourself to looking at something else, something that might not be what you'd like for it to be. I'm pretty sure this has been done before, but that's the kind of thing that freaks me out. That's the
What
kind
the
of thing that
devil?
really, yeah.
Yeah, Jenny's
That's
technology is
See,
going
now-
awry again.
Yeah, speaking of, yes.
And now we cut the panel off because that's.
I'm sorry, my horns kept trying to get up and the halo kind of, yeah, sorry.
Alledria starts talking about the video technology.
And the video technology talks right back.
Yes. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that kind of freaks me out about, because I'm a streamer.
Mhm.
I spend a lot of time on Twitch, so I spend a lot of time streaming. So of course, I'm very familiar with the video technology required to do that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, my first thought is, okay, who or what? And because that question immediately occurs to me, that's where the horror lives. The giant question mark.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So Jenny,
Um,
before the technology gods come for you again.
Come for me again. Well, they come for me all the time. I'm actually problem girl. When I worked at IBM, I brought down our entire system worldwide for a weekend. How?
Okay.
How, you ask? I was in a class and I asked specifically, I have witnesses saying, is there anything we can do that would cause a problem? No, everything's been troubleshot. So if you were supposed to be able to load in your team name and then you could pull your team then in every document, you didn't have to load the 12 other people. It was just one button, right? And I did it, and 6 hours later, it's still pulling, right? And finally I just like unplug I hard stop it. I go on about my day thinking, well, that didn't work. Monday morning, I get a call from the main people in IT saying, what did you do this? And I'm like, yes. They're like, do you know what you did? I'm like, well, yes, but why? I said, you took down the system worldwide all weekend. And I'm like, am I fired? They're like, oh, no, honey, no. We just need to know what you did. Well, what I did was I used the drop-down menu, and they never do because they like to use their little keys, but I'm a user with a capital U, and I'm not ashamed of it. And so I used the drop-down menu, and I said that there was this thudding sound, and he goes, oh. Because, yeah, we didn't test any of that. I'm like, well, just so you know, I might have been the first, but I won't be the last.
Right.
We did Partner World. Anything that could go wrong, it would be 2 weeks before we launched. The call would come and be like, you need to test the system. I wasn't even trying, and I could find everything that broke. All of that was human programming error. Okay, garbage in, garbage out. So on the one hand, you could be going, okay, well, technology, yeah. I expect it to break down. I just expect it. It doesn't throw me. What you guys were talking about, if it just happens individually, it's when El Marie was saying, now if it's happening to everybody, that's when it becomes scary. Not that it happened to me, because I can just walk by and go, oh, let me just push on that button and it's going to go haywire. So technology fails all the time, but it fails all the time, usually due to human error or an energy spike. And everybody like, what do we do? What do we do? My answer, as the person who this goes, I just go unplug it. Okay. Pull it out from the wall. Okay. If it can't get electricity, it's not on. In which case, then that's when it's scary to me. If you've unplugged everything and now it's still somehow working, that is where it starts scaring me, where it is now something has happened that is not normal or natural. So I don't know. I'm working on too many different things to tell you what I'm going to put in where, but my expectation is that technology is always going to go wrong because it was set up by humans, and all it takes is one comma in the wrong spot in your code, and your code doesn't work, or it works wrong. So, but I don't want us to get the humans out of it, because again, I'm really, really not prepared to worship our machine overloads. But I will.
So as we look at, and we're kind of coming to wrap up, one of the beautiful parts about being a writer, about, being in this business, is the ability to jump down a rabbit hole, do the research, find out stuff that you're sitting there looking, going, I didn't really want to know that. And I didn't really want to know that was that close If we look at some of the film, the books being produced, thinking about things like Westworld, we haven't really dove down a lot of the things that are kind of fundamental we see, like Jurassic Park and the very questionable technology that was used there. But the idea is prescient. We've seen shows like Black Mirror come out. We've seen, Altered Carbon. We're seeing even things like, if I go back to Aldous Huxley and Brave New World, we see a lot of our future or our current day in the fiction of the past, sometimes fairly well past. So, in terms of thinking about this, and I get calls fairly frequently about helping to research and put plans together around some of these technological pieces. So, Marie, if you were diving down the rabbit hole, how do you pursue deciding where you're going to go down the rabbit hole, what you're looking for, especially for something along these lines where you need to build something and need for it to fail and fail spectacularly? Where are you starting with that process? What does this look like for you, and what makes that fun for you?
Well, anyone who's listening in this holding their breath for something magnificent, this is the answer to it all. It's not going to happen right now. But I will.
But if you attend the Speculative Fiction Academy, we'll give. Oh, sorry.
That's true. I'm wearing the shirt. But so first, let me say this: that research, these rabbit holes we're talking about, this is writing. Like, this is it. Like, it's not just getting words down. You have been writing in that time slot that you allocated for yourself that day. If what all you did was do some research that got you nowhere and everywhere at the same time, that is writing. So I never look at the rabbit hole as a negative. I went down it for whatever, and I found out some stuff I may or may not use, found out a whole lot of stuff that I probably didn't care about, but I now know more than I did when I started, and in doing that, whatever it is, in doing that, I can flesh out the story better, because you can't just say, I need to understand, what happens with, how you make wine. And I know there's grapes involved. And so you start looking up grapes in Italy. I mean, that honestly though, frankly, that's how it begins, right? You say grapes, Italy, wine, sure. And that's how you start. And then you end up with all these different things, and however fermenting or whatever. I don't know anything about wine. I just drink the sweet stuff, right? So whatever that is, you dig down, but you can't just say they make sweet wine a specific way and then go on about your merry way and think that your research for the story is done. So that rabbit hole that you go down, where you learn all these different methods, let something sit, blah, blah, all these different types of wine. That's knowledge you don't think you need, but you do. And you're going to use it later. So again, you haven't wasted time. And again, you've been writing. So that's where the fun is, when you can say, oh, I was just trying to figure out, if zombies exist in the world. And I found out about this bug that gets a parasite or something. It was horrible. I've heard it twice now. And I'm like, it attacks the thing and it's walking around like a shell of itself. It's a zombie and it's still walking. I know that now. Didn't want to know that. Wasn't looking for that at all. But I definitely have given out some knowledge that makes just like trivial pursuit. I mean, I could win that question. And the fact is, it's writing. And so that's the fun. I think that the knowledge that we gain from this little search that started with one or two words, totally unconnected, and maybe it'll help, and you come out with a piece that you can use in your work. So I think that for me, at least, it doesn't matter how you begin that research. It also doesn't matter how long you're down that rabbit hole. You will use something you find at the very bottom of that rabbit hole one day, and it's all worth it.
Alledria, how about you? How do you approach the research, diving down the rabbit hole, and how do you know when you've gone far enough?
Usually, as far as I'm concerned, I write the story and then I dive down the rabbit holes. Because at that point, then I actually kind of have an idea of, what am I digging for? Where am I digging to? Am I digging to China? So I have a better idea of what I find that I might need. Because while it's a lot of fun to do research. I really do love research. I'm an amateur historian, so I love me some research. But I also realize that research can become productive procrastination very, very quickly. So it's like you almost have to know when to pull back, when to go, okay, I have now done enough research to write this story. So usually I just write the story and then I'm like, okay, this needs fleshing out. I can draw giant circles around the things that I'm like, I don't know enough about this topic. Mm-hmm. At which point I can then go, okay, I need to know more about this topic as it pertains to this topic and this topic and this topic. So then I don't have to, so then my research becomes a little bit narrower, but it also becomes more quickly useful. So when I'm doing technology research, I usually start with like the end user tech blogs. So things that are basically written for people like me who don't do tech as a job, but who do tech just to see what it does. And then if I have to go a step further, I'll go a step further. I'll go a little bit further down the rabbit hole, and then I'll go a little bit further down the rabbit hole. And then when I reach the point at which it's all jargon, I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Jenny?
I applaud that focus. I need to find that focus in myself.
I'm too much of an extreme linear writer to do that. I can't do that way. If I wrote it, it'd be all wrong and wasted words. So I time myself for that because it can, you start digging in. I'm an Old West expert because the first thing I ever wrote was a novel set in the Old West, and boy, do I know a lot. Okay, and I have a lot of research books because of it. Because of the Alien series, I think I can go get a degree in astrophysics now, which I know way more about than I ever wanted to. But I had to know that because as soon as they're leaving the planet, I have to know where they're actually going, right? And along those lines. So, but research can be fun. In Alien Tango, which is the second book, I was researching the Kennedy Space Center because I had action set there and I needed to know roughly what it looked like. And I discovered that they have an alligator preserve and somehow gators moved into the series, right? And fans love the gators. As do I. So you get a lot of fun stuff from research. I'm with El Marie. You don't lose it's not wasted time. But because it's fun and it's interesting, and most of us are writing because we're also readers, you start really digging through. So I usually give myself about 30 minutes, an hour, if it's something that I really don't know what I'm talking about. And then if I don't have what I need, I either need to find an expert or I need to change my plot point. Because if I can't find what I need in an hour with Google, and thank God for the internet, because the Phoenix Public Library, I can't even count the number of books I had out for like years, right? And now I don't need to do that because we've got Google, we've got Wikipedia, we've got all these great things, everything. And so you put your phrase in, so it would be Jim, to your question, if I was looking to, it would be spectacular technological failures. There's a list that's going to pop up. Anytime I need something like this, like, general who made a major error in a war, and there's a list that pops up. So this information is out there. You just have to word your Google search correctly. And so a lot of times, that might take me longer to word it correctly to get what I'm looking for. But that would be where I would start. And then it's just, I'm like El Marie, I feel what I need done. But I really have, the time limit really helps. It forces me to find the stuff. And I can always go back and read it if I'm super, super interested. And sometimes you do need to read it. Sometimes you need the article or articles that are surrounded to give you the full feeling of what it's like. But if I can't find it or find it quickly, that's when I call an expert. And then it's like, give me a 2-hour crash course. Here's what I need. Tell me what I need to sound like so I don't sound stupid, and go from there.
So, Jonathan, bring it home.
So my background is journalism. I studied journalism. My intention was to be a newspaper reporter. I actually didn't do that. I became a magazine feature writer for 30 years. And one of the things my best professor told me is, if there's somebody alive who knows the information, get them on the phone, get a live quote, as opposed to quoting a source. A live quote is always more immediate because science constantly moves forward. So when I do my research for my novels, I generally have what I call a presumptive idea of what's going on. Like, I think I know a little bit about nuclear science. I know a little bit about this, a little bit about that. Writers being knowledge junkies, we tend to acquire information like flypaper, So that helps me shape the essential novel. But then I need to find an expert. Sometimes I'll go on Facebook and say, does anybody know an expert in this field? Sometimes I do Google searches for articles on a subject. Like, I might say transgenics controversy expert, and I'll find a news article where there is a controversy about it, and then they'll quote an expert. That expert, they always give their credentials because credentials matter. I then follow that person to whatever university or organization they belong to, go to that website, and there's always a contact page. Reach out. Like, for example, I was doing a nonfiction book about what would happen if zombies were real. And I wanted to get a definitive statement separating the George Romero flesh-eating zombies from the Haitian belief in zombies, which are totally different things. The name was hung on the genre by Italian film distributors, and we haven't been able to remove it. So the guy who is probably the world's greatest expert on zombies was Wade Davis, the ethnobotanist who wrote Serpent and the Rainbow. Mm-hmm. Everybody quotes that book. I wanted a more contemporary quote because that quote is 40-some years old. So I looked for him, found out he worked for Nat Geo, went to their contact page, told them, through that what I wanted from Wade Davis. He wound up calling me because he was so tired of people quoting Serpent and the Rainbow, which was a doctoral thesis, and he's written so much more since then, has learned so much more about the ethnobotany since then, that he doesn't even like to recommend that book anymore, even though it was just bestseller. So I got a more contemporary quote from him that no one else has. Now, in my fiction, again, I do the same thing. I have a guy. I was on a panel. It was a weird panel on viruses and other bioweapons in comic books, and I was on that with Kevin Eastman, the artist who co-created Ninja Turtles, a virologist and a molecular biologist. A molecular biologist, Ronald Coleman, he and I hit it off, and I asked if I could pick his brain for different stories. I've done that so often, he's now become a character in some of my comics and my novels. He's the expert my hero talks to. So just recently, I wanted to create a weaponized fungal bioweapon using ergot and psilocybin as a weaponized, in a weaponized form. That's what I wanted, but I had no idea how to explain that, what its range would be, what the onset would be, how the fungus could be preserved, all of those things I didn't know. So I talked to somebody who, this is their day-to-day job. They know the absolute up-to-the-minute stuff, which means if I'm getting that from him today, there is very little chance that there's going to be a novel out there by the time my novel hits the stands, a novel out there that's going to have more current information, or even information as current as what I had. So I can put this stuff in, and then when it does hit the news, I look prescient. An example of this was I did a novel called Predator 1, where, and this is some years ago, talking about autonomous drive system hacking. This is before commercial drones were available. I talked about all the bad things that can happen with commercial drones and a few other things. And by the time the book hit the stands, 1 year after I wrote it, those things were happening in the news, exactly what was in the book. It makes the writer look visionary, but writers have always been professionally visionary. We take what we see and say, again, as I mentioned earlier, what's the worst that could happen? But then it's on us to make sure we do the research. Now, the challenge is, being a research junkie, I could play in that playground all day long. So, as Ginny mentioned and others mentioned, I have to limit what I do. I'll ask a set of questions, and I typically do my interviews via email rather than phone or Zoom, because when they're talking, like we are here, they get so excited about the topic, they sometimes interrupt themselves and go off on tangents. I don't want that from my expert. Also, I can't begin to spell half of the words that they use. So when they send me an email, often they'll cut out bits and pieces of papers they've written and so on. I'll have the exact phraseology. I'll have it in context. And then one of the things I ask them for is, I need two versions of this. One, a scientist would say to another scientist, and one, a scientist would say to the hero who doesn't know what the hell this is all about. And I get those two versions because the one is, in fact, the version any scientist I talk to is talking to his colleagues about, and the other is what he's saying at cocktail parties when he wants his friends to understand what the hell he does. But I limit it to the questions in my email, and then I move on working on the book. When the email questions come in, I fit that into the book. And then if I have follow-up questions, I email them out and go back to the book. That way I'm not lost in endless research, kind of letting them do a lot of the research for me, giving them credit in the acknowledgements page, putting them into the stories, occasionally killing them off in the stories. They actually like that, which is weird, but they do. And that allows me to have very current information. The one fun side effect of that is that a lot of these guys, some of the virologists, epidemiologists, and so on I know, will send me emails when something new is breaking in science. Like if I get an email saying, this is your next plot, it's amazing. I know, and if it's say from an epidemiologist, I know it's not going to be something I want to open in front of kids, especially if there are photo attachments. When I found out about necrotizing fasciitis, made that mistake in an airport lounge, somebody sitting next to me. That was a mistake I learned from. But I had Zika in a novel before Zika hit the press, because one of my scientist friends said, this is going to blow up big. Use this in a book. And I did. But I do limit myself by the email thing allows me a few questions at a time. I know they're out there being answered. I can go on and write. When the information comes back, I cut and paste it in my document. I'll eventually rewrite it in my own words. But I keep the document moving forward.
Well, I think everybody's got a lot to go out there and build off of as they go creating their technology going awry. But before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you, website, social media, and of course, if you've got some latest release you want to push. And also, if you've got a recommendation you want to slip in there for anybody that's wanting to read something about technology going awry, watch something, what's something you'd recommend? So, Alledria, you're up first.
My recommendation is a movie called Await Further Instructions. And you can find me online at alledriahurt.com. And most of my social media uses my first name, so that should make it fairly easy.
Jenny?
My website's www.ginikoch.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Pinterest. It looks like I'm on Instagram, but I'm not. I am, but I'm not there. And people keep sending me stuff. I'm in an anthology from Zombie Needs Brains, Temporally Out of Order, where machines and other things go out of order in a temporal way, not temporally, but time-wise. And that's actually very fun. The authors have some really, really cool ideas. So that would be my recommendation. Temporally Out of Order.
Jonathan?
JonathanMaberry.com. Just spell my last name right. Maberry, not M-A-Y. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, website. It's all under my name. Easy to find. My two favorite recommendations for reading Technology Gone Awry were fundamental to me, or foundational to me. One I mentioned earlier, I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. Though written in 1954, it holds up because it's the first science fiction horror story ever written where they give you the actual science. All of the stuff before that, Jekyll and Hyde, Frankenstein, they didn't really give you the science. Matheson did. And the other one was Andromeda Strain, which still holds up as a great read. The movie's even really good, even though a lot of the technology clearly is 50 years out of date. The protocols, the understanding of how to research and find a disease form and identify it holds up pretty well because that basics of science is rock solid.
And Elle Marie.
elmariewood.com, Elmarie Wood everywhere, pretty much. Twitter, it's Elmarie Wood 1, but everywhere else is Elmarie Wood. And I'm like Gini, it looks like I'm on Instagram, but I just don't do that well at all. But Twitter and Facebook, definitely. Suggestions? That's a hard one because I keep going back to the ones that I know make me a little nervous. So Contagion, like I talked about earlier, definitely you should watch that. I mean, you should watch that. And again, if you want to read this time, read the Jack Finney novel, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a better book than it is movie, and that's saying something, especially when you consider the Donald Sutherland version. What was that, 78, 79?
Yep, 78.
Better than that. Better than that. I mean, I know. Do you guys agree? And I mean, I think that it's that same thing. It's the, oh no, that's not what I thought it would be. So, and I don't want to give much away, but it's truly fantastic reading. So, yeah, that's it.
And I've had the pleasure of being your host tonight, Jim Nettles. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, thespeculative-fiction-academy.com with, of course, Elmarie, and Creating Prose, the podcast at creatingprose.com, and, of course, here at ConTinual. And we will see all of you guys again soon.
Peace.
Thank you.